age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled, our heart has returned, and the world will burn.
Hey, how's everybody doing tonight? This is RJ. If you can hear me, someone give me a shout out in the comments just to make sure. And if I start to digitize, please let me know in the comments because I have a little bit of rain out here. And as everybody knows, I have satellite internet. So things like the weather tend to affect my signal. Anyways, if one of you could give me a shout out in the comments, that'd be great just to let me know that you can hear me. And let's see. Okay, Greg is here. He says, glad to see one of my Irish cousins didn't beat you with a brick. Okay. Let's see. Michael is here. Buffy is here. Movie theater Killing Bird Storm 8000. How you doing? All right, Buffy. Howdy. So, again, I think my comments are a bit behind because I'm lagging just a little bit here, but let everybody, okay, Greg says you can hear me. Great. All right. So we'll start off by what I always do, just to give you a little recap of what's going on with my latest campaign. Crom the Destroyer has about, I think, 6 days left now. Depends on when it changes over because it's an odd time of day. It changes over according to what time I actually hit go, and I can't remember what it was when I went go live. Anyway, so we have about 6 days left on Crom the Destroyer campaign. We're about to hit 14,000. So we're hoping we can push that up to 20,000 by the time we get to the end. Usually we try to rally around the end. I'm going to see if I can get on some more live streams as well. I got a few lined up and might go back on Michael Bancroft's if he'll have me for a closeout stream. I'll just have to give him a shout and see if we can do that as well. So Crom the Destroyer, for those of you who don't know, is my upcoming graphic novel. The campaign for it is live now for the next 6 days on Indiegogo. It is returned to form for low fantasy. I'm trying to bring back the feel of early pulp fiction fantasy. So Crom the Destroyer, kind of Robert E. Howard feel, but I'm going back to the Irish myth that inspired the characters of Robert E. Howard's Conan and Cole and Solomon Kane. So I'm trying to reignite that spark of those Celtic myths in order to recreate a combination of those characters into one. So that's my return to form for low fantasy. Also, that link for that campaign is in the description if you want to go and check that out. And the links for my 2 superhero graphic novels, Thomas Valiant and the Valiant Heroes. You can get both of them at the Valiant Heroes page. So that campaign is in demand. Whoops. Got a little something falling over on me here, but hopefully we got nothing more. That's just a little bit of life happening. So for the Valiant Heroes campaign, if you order the Valiant Heroes book, it is going to be publishing, like I said, we're printing right now, or about to print right now, one of the floppies, because you can get it as either 3 floppies or a complete graphic novel with the 3 floppies and a backup story. So we're getting into the printing phase with some of the posters and things like that. We're doing the lettering, and the coloring is almost done. Line art is done for that. So if anybody wants to know a little bit of an update about the Valiant Heroes, and if you order the Valiant Heroes, you can also purchase Thomas Valiant, which is my first graphic novel, when you check out if you want to. So all of that is there, and I'm working furiously on a couple other projects right now. They're about to finalize the printing on Anvil's Iron Age magazine #2, and that has a Crom the Destroyer story in it as well. So a link for that is, well, the first one is up right now. Actually, no, the second one is up right now on what is it? Fund My Comic. So if you want to go order that from Fund My Comic, or you can get a copy of it that will be signed by me through the Crown the Destroyer page. Also, I'm looking at getting a about 6 to 8 page small short story that I might submit to. It came out on a Wednesday, which is Alterna, and there's a lot of things going on. There's another project that I'm a part of, which I'm not supposed to speak of yet until we get to my part of it. So, a lot going on with the Fourth Age comics, just to let everybody know. So, I usually talk about comics for a good half hour. Hopefully, I'm going to be shorter today because I was answering all the questions last week, and it took me quite a while. I was on here for almost an hour and a half, and I only talked about my love of comics for about half an hour. But I'm going to talk about the basics of comics for those people who just love to read comics, so that you understand where these things come from and have a better appreciation for comics. And so you're geeking out about comics that way. And they can also be used for people who are making comics to go back to the great way of making comics, the traditional way, which is what I focus on. So I talked a lot about different things, about lettering, about cover art, about a whole bunch of different things over the last, I've been doing this series now probably for about 5, 6 weeks now. So today I'm going to get into a little bit of the nitty gritty, and I'm going to talk about Will Eisner rules for making comics. And I think the best way to do that is just to go over basically one chapter of his book, or one of his books. I'm not going to go over the whole thing, obviously. I'm going to show you a couple of excerpts from it and read a couple of excerpts from it and discuss it. And again, anybody wants to ask me any questions about this or anything at all, my campaigns, my making comics, about your favorite comics, anything, you go ahead, stick it in the comments, and I'll get to that at the end. And I'll try to answer everybody's comment, everybody's question. If you could put a question mark on it and tag me in it so that I know it's for me. Sometimes it gets a little confusing to me because people are talking to each other in the comments, which is great, but I don't know who exactly is talking to. Anyways, so first of all, let's show you, let's see here. There is, well, I'll tie it in. This is not the way that Will Eisner talks about it in his book. So I'm going to go actually backwards. I'm going to talk about the first of chapter 1 for one of his books. So I talked about lettering the other day, and actually twice. It took me about um, two live streams to finish what I wanted to talk to about lettering. But one of the things that people were talking about was lettering being used in a graphic format, not just as a font. And that's one of the things that Will Eisner talks about, how to bring mood into your comic. Now, he talks about himself being, and he thinks of himself as, when he was live anyways, as a cartoonist, because he was coming into the field of comics when it wasn't even comics. He was around, I think, when the first comic, the published comic that we think of as a comic book today, came out around 1934. But he was doing his Spirit comics, which sometimes were just one panel, sometimes are two, sometimes they were a couple of pages. There's a whole lot of different ways that he made his main story, which was the Spirit. But he talks about using, again, graphic art for your lettering itself. He talks about using hand lettering, not using something digital. Well, he wouldn't have, he does talk about digital because the book itself actually came out, I think late 1980s, and there was an addition to a chapter. Anyways, but he was talking more about print wise back in the 30s, 40s, 50s. But yeah, he's talking about doing it by hand at sometimes in order to bring it into a more realistic feel, a more, I don't know what he used exactly as the word for it. He talks about it as a more grounded feel. I'll put it that way. So if you're looking at the picture in the background, he talks about, he uses this as one of his examples of using a very specific font in order to uh, convey more meaning than you would convey by using just text alone, because he sees comics as being a combination of a visual and a textual medium, both of which you have to read. So one of the things is you can take those two and put them together so that the visual and the textual, um, again, language that you could use to understand it are used at the same time. So within this one right here that I'm showing on the screen, you see he's using a font that has specific proportions to it, and you have the rain dripping off of it, which adds to the story, because the whole part of what he's talking about in this panel is the overflow of the water into the streets because it has rained for so long that it's actually backed up the sewer system. And I got a couple others here to show as well. Just a couple of examples of this exact thing that he does. I think I got at least one more. Let me take a look here. Oh yeah, here's another one here. This is one from, I'm not sure if this is from one of the Spirit comics or not. It might be, because again, there was a mixture of a lot of things in the Spirit. But again, he talks about using a very specific crafted font as if it were a picture in itself. Again, he's not using something that was readily available. Obviously, this is back when there are very few fonts, but at the same time, he's using the whole concept of the words themselves and the letters themselves actually have more to do with the picture than with text, or at the very least, an equal amount, because he has blood dripping from each of the letters. And again, he's trying to enforce a mood, and that is something he can do when you're starting from the top. Because for this one here, this panel here, you get your picture at the bottom, but you get your words at the top, you get your text at the top, and you're starting to read the words first. This is one of the things that you do with Western comics and Western cartoons in the old sense, that is to say, what you're looking at right now. Um, and if you're reading the text itself and you see the blood dripping off of it, then the text you're reading is also a image that you're reading and gives you a key to the mood that is actually being used. Now, I want to talk about this partly because it's something that interests me extremely, because right now we have more of a textual hodgepodge. It doesn't really work right now in a lot of modern comics for them switching over every time the font that they use for every speaker, or that the kind of word balloons that they use for every speaker, because there's an odd combination, if you ask me. I don't know, put this in the comments if you want, but to me there's too much of an odd combination of, this is obviously something that is computer generated as text. You can tell it's not done by hand, but at the same time they want you to believe that this is unique to each individual person. So they're just using an individual font for each person and an individual word balloon size or an individual word balloon shape for each person, especially if they're doing something like Thor, or another book that came out recently would be like Strange Academy and things like that. They were using different word balloons, kinds of word balloons for each character. It got really, really frustrating to read, if you ask me. But again, what I think the problem there is the fact that they overuse the damn thing. Within Simonson's Thor, Walter Simonson's Thor, he had very special font used for different characters that was great, and it did work for the very specific points that it was using, but it wasn't for every character, because I think that is one of the best, if not the best, comic run in all of comic history. But anyways, I'm going to show you this panel here and read you something about what Will Eisner, actually, I'll zoom in a little bit. So it's basically two panels in one. I can't really take myself off here. The spirit is underneath my little symbol here. That's the best as I can do. So This is one of his spirit comics, and this is how Will Eisner describes it. First of all, he says, so this is the first chapter of one of his books. It's comics as a form of reading. He says, comics communicate in a language that relies on a visual experience common to both creator and audience. Modern readers can be expected to have an easy understanding of the image word mix and the traditional deciphering of text. So, one of the things I want to do an actual video about this, usually on one of my Saturday videos. I'm going to expand, I think, on some of this, but I'm going to take it and I'm going to try to connect it with a few other things before I do that. So it probably won't be this week. But one of the fun things that I see here is that he's talking about you need to have a visual experience that's common to both the creator and the audience. And that's not what you have within modern comics, especially if he's including the text. And he is including the text. He goes on to say, reading of words is but a subset of a much more general human activity, which includes symbol decoding, information interrogation, and organization. So basically, he goes into chapter 2 talking about the fact that we began our languages as pictograms, and they're not that far from pictograms right now, even if you're speaking English or using the Roman alphabet, anything like that. So at the same time that you're reading a word, you're also reading letters. All of those are derived from pictograms. And so it's a symbol decoding, and so is the symbol decoding of the pictures that you put in a comic. Now, I talked about a couple of weeks ago, at the very least, might have been more than a month ago, about how much Will Eisner was talking in his books about comics as being an extension of reality, which is what I'm always talking about, the Aristotelian way of looking at a story, but in a very, what is it, logical way of speaking. And you can see that exactly with what I'm about to read you. And this is the biggest quote that I'm going to give you. This is the last one as well. Excuse me. So he says, well, actually, I read part of it, and you can look at the picture in the background and you'll see what he's talking about in this little spirit comic. Okay. He says, a description of the action in this panel can be diagrammed like a sentence. The predicates of the gun shooting and the wrestling belong to separate clauses. The subject of gun shooting is the crook, and the guy flying, the guy trying to fly, his name is Gerhardt, and Gerhardt is the direct object. So the gun shooting crook is a subject in this sentence, and the guy trying to fly is the direct object. And he also goes on and he says, the many modifiers include the adverb, bang bang, and the adjectives of visual language, such as posture, gesture, and the grimace, which is on Gerhardt's face as he's being shot. And then he says, the second panel concludes the subplot and again uses the language of the body and the staging of graphic design to delineate the predicates. So he's breaking everything down into this is a sentence. It's a subject and a predicate. This is exactly what you do for logic. Exactly. And he's talking about how you have modifiers, adverbs with the sound effects, bang, bang. You got adjectives with the posture and the gestures. And you have two separate clauses within this sentence. They're the two action things that are going on within the first part of the panel, the gunshots and the fight that's going on below it. So this is all a logical way of breaking down this entire thing. So I'll change the picture in the background so you can see the larger text, because it'll get a lot smaller and a little bit confusing here, I know, just because it's so small, but the best I could do with this with StreamYard right here. And if hopefully you can read it. But you see, there is a second, there's one panel, then two, and then it goes downwards, and then you got the text. And this is what he's talking about in this little bit here. He says, the final transition requires the reader to break from the convention of the left to right sequence. The eye follows the airstream down past a nebulous background into the solid body on the ground, and then bounces back upward to view the half-toned cloud in which Gerhardt is resurrected. This bounce is unique to the visual narrative. The reader must implicitly use a knowledge of physics laws, that is to say, knowledge of gravity and gases, to, quote, read this passage. The accompanying text adds some unillustrated thoughts, hand lettered in a style that is consistent with the statement that its message conveys. The visual treatment of words as graphic art forms is part of the vocabulary. And so he says the text reads as an image. So basically, what he's saying here, that's all I'm going to read of that. That's from one of Will Eisner's books. Excuse me. But what he's saying is that you can take the visual, which are the panels, and your art, and use it as text, and you can take your text, which itself is textual in a certain font and a certain style, and you can use it as an image. And that's what he's doing. He's mixing both of these together. Now you'll notice also that he says he's breaking, to some extent, with this one that he's using as an example, he's breaking a rule within Western comic book reading. He's saying you have to go first panel, second panel, then downwards, and then back upwards to the guy as he's basically been flying as a angel, as a spirit, I guess we'll put it that way, and then over to the text, which is on your left, which again breaks the normal rules. But again, Eisner, as I said within a couple of my other videos, he's actually not averse to breaking some of the rules some of the time, as long as there's a reason to do so. And again, that's one of the things that I don't think happens within modern comics. They try to give you a breaking of the rules without first understanding the rules, and then so the entire thing is just a garbled mess because they don't understand the rules. Therefore, they don't understand that if you break it in this way, no, the people, as Eisner says within that quote that I just gave, the people don't have the same mindset as the author right there. You have to realize as an author that the mindset and the images that you're using can be deciphered by your reader. It's like if you're using what they do today, anyways, when they're trying to do this in a way that doesn't work, it's as if you're presenting to the reader a text box within a foreign language that they don't understand. And that's why it doesn't work. Anyways, I find this fascinating. This is some of the best stuff ever. If you want to learn about the traditional way of making comics, as I always say, I went over this on my channel so many times, but the fact that within 2009, 2010, Marvel was the leader of the comic industry, and it still is the mainstream comic industry, and everybody followed their lead. And their lead at that time was, let's break from all of these traditional ways of making comics, and we'll start anew with our own way of doing it again. And so all of these rules that have been crafted or were crafted at the very least for, 75 years minimum at that time, depending on when you want to go back to the first comic book, was just chucked out the window. But if you look at stuff like Eisner's book, you'll see exactly why this works. You see exactly the rational definition of how this is laid out in a rational and logical way to use, again, as he's doing, pictures as words and words as pictures, mix them together and create something which is not just a cartoon, but is a story in itself that can be read in many different ways and connects with your reader. Anyways, like I said, I wanted to talk only about 20, 25 minutes about that. This is just the first chapter of one of Eisner's books. Again, the opening chapter, which is fascinating. It's only a short read. It's only like 10 pages. And he's talking about, well, actually the exact stuff that I'm presenting to you, but he's talking about it in a way where you have a lot of visual references and all that kind of stuff. So if you can get a hold of his works, especially if you're someone who really appreciates how comics are made or wants to deepen your understanding of how comics are made and so understand where they're coming from, traditional comics anyways, or you want to make comics, go and get his book, because this is something that's just the essentials. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about within the upcoming videos is the fact that you still have these people who win Eisners and who go to the school that Eisner taught at for a long time. They think they're following these rules, but they're really not. And that's one of the things I want to go over within one of my Saturday videos. Anyways, I'm gonna look at my comments here and say hello to everybody again, and then get into any of the questions that you have. I know some people might find this boring, but I find it fascinating about learning about the traditional way of how to make comics and the best way to do it, if you ask me. All right, so Greg was the first in the chat. How you doing, Greg? Movie theater, how you doing? Puffy's there. Michael's here. Let's see. I'm going to start reading the comments as well, besides just looking at it, who's here. Let's see. Michael says he missed last week. Let's see. Didn't tell. Yeah, a lot of people have been telling me this, Michael, that YouTube didn't tell you that my stuff was going live. I would say I am going to try as best as possible to stream on a Wednesday night, if at all possible. It'll be either starting at around 11, somewhere between 11 and 12, depending on where you are. Actually, no, I guess it'll be between 10 and 11. We're going East Coast. Let's go East Coast. So it's Eastern time would be between 10 and 11. That's basically when I'll start streaming. So if you can check on YouTube or go check my channel. If you're on Twitter, I usually post a link for that on Twitter as well. So just to let everybody know if you don't get notified. And the only thing is, if you don't see me at all on a Wednesday, I will try my best to stream on the Thursday. And I will probably put up a community post or something saying that I won't be streaming tonight if there's something like a bad storm that knocks out my internet. Anyways, hopefully that will help people know when I am streaming and not. But again, I hope my plan is to do it every Wednesday between 10 and 11 Eastern to start. Let's see. Movie Theater says, I am a new fan to comics, but I can appreciate your critiques. Thank you very much. Again, I'm learning just like everybody else. Hopefully, um, I'm going to learn more and more as I do. That's basically what my entire life is based around. Never stop learning. Never stop learning. And that's one of the things I'm going to do. And I want to just share this with people. Again, it's not me pontificating saying this is how you make comics from on high. Do it this way. No, it's just me learning, and hopefully you learning along with me. And it's fun, and it's a great experience. And that will be not just for comics, but also for bande dessinée and for manga and everything else as well. So let's go a little bit here. Calliope is here. How you doing? Da, da, da. Let's see who else is here. Calliope says you can hear me. Great. I'm just going through. Miss Maria is here. Miss Maria has a comment. Let's see what Miss Maria has to say. She says, I am writing some fan fiction, not original fiction, but I am creating exactly what you need to do. One of the things I'm doing now is just I'm trying to follow the advice of Mike Barron. When I spoke to him, he said, you really should, as a writer, have at the very least a basic understanding of anatomy and be able to sketch out at the very least some basic panel designs. So I'm going into a little bit of that right now because I can draw a little bit. But I think that was good advice. And one of the things I come across when I'm trying to learn more and more about this is you need to do. One of the things when you see stuff about drawing is don't trace. Actually put the thing that you want to make a copy of next to you and then draw it yourself. Don't trace it, because doing it as a trace is a cheat that doesn't activate the centers of your brain that's creative and understand the differences and shows you what's going on and where your failures are. So that's the same thing with writing fan fiction, if you ask me. You're not recreating the exact same thing. You're making a copy of something else, but it's your copy of it. And writing like that is going to help you, Miss Maria. Trust me. Let's see. Eddie's in the house. He says, how you doing, RJ? I'm doing great, Eddie. Let's see who else is here. Chuck is here. He says hello from West Georgia. How you doing? Let's see. Who else we got? What do we got for comments here? Puffy says, tell me what your secret project is, RJ. You must. I can't. I'm working with on one of the other creators within this space, but I haven't been given the green light to actually speak about it yet. It's not something that I am taking the center on by any means, but it'll be coming out pretty soon because he's working on it, and we'll keep you abreast of that. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, here's something. Oh, this is what I want to do. Sean says, I love 70s and 80s horror comics. Okay, Sean, I'll give you a treat here because one of the things I forgot that I wanted to show was I want to show some of these covers. Give me a second here. I got to go to part of StreamYard. I got to move out of the comments and put something up in the background. Okay, so these are covers from some horror comics, some suspense comics, things like that. These are older comics. This is one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I forgot. Thank you very much, Sean, for reminding me that I wanted to do that. While at the same time, I'll give you some nice horror comics to look at in the background. um, if you look at this stuff, these covers here, you'll see exactly, I think, what Will Eisner was talking about, because what Will Eisner was trying to do with a couple of panels, these older comic covers were trying to do with one comic cover itself. Sometimes they give you more than one picture, but most of the time they don't. You'll see here in this picture using a very specific font, using a very specific word balloon, using structure for language, all these kinds of things. The whole thing is based upon this Will Eisner way of making comics, but it's not his alone. Because if you look at old, even especially, I would say, film noir movie posters, but really just any old movie posters, you'll see the same thing. This is exactly what they're doing. They're using a visual medium in order to convey a textual story to your mind, and they're using text on top of that as part of the visual medium, and it's fascinating. And I'm just going to answer some questions, but to give you a look at those in the background, they'll change up about one every 30 seconds, so you can get a good understanding of what I'm talking about within these great old covers. I didn't put any movie posters in it this week, but I might get into that some other time. So let's see, scrolling down. Robert is here. Stress level is here. How you doing? Let's see. Eddie says, what is, I gotta put these on the main screen in order to read them. My eyes are not that great with my glasses on. Eddie says, I enjoy your discussion on lettering. I had to study typography and constructing lettering by hand long ago, but didn't remember much. It's an interesting and often neglected subject. Agreed. Completely agree. I'll get this off the screen so that you can see that beautiful cover. But yeah, and again, this is one of the things that Eisner just talked about in the section that I was reading from his book. It's something that you can use to your advantage, not just within using the same lettering again. One of the things I think is the building up of this medium, because he talks about that in his book, about how the audience itself becomes more and more understanding of the text and the visuals and how they work together. One of the things is, to me, is that Comic Sans have now become an ingrained part of comic books. And you know exactly that when you read a comic book, if it's in Comic Sans for its font, what kind of a comic that you're going to get. And a lot of comics today just take Comic Sans and chuck it out the window. And I think that's the wrong thing to do, because again, I think it's a visual image of the text which enhances the experience itself through the understanding of a Western audience who recognizes that as part of the history of comics. So yeah, agreed, Eddie. It's fascinating. Let's see. Uh, Robert says, I have a typography handbook around here somewhere. Type, I think it's typography. Yes. So a lot of people are talking about um, what, yeah, Will Eisner talks about and what I talked about within, I guess it was, who was it? Oh, I can't remember the letterer that I did the video on last week, but yeah, fascinating subject. Let's see here. Greg has a question. RJ, do you want to learn about cyberpunk? Indigo Gaming has a 3-part cyberpunk documentary on his channel, Indigo Gaming. Okay. I don't know that channel. I'll have to look it up. You mentioned you were getting into it. It's pretty good. Well, I'll see if I can take a look at that. That's a good suggestion. If I can remember, because I can't really navigate my computer while I'm doing this to write it down. I should have a pen and pencil next to me with these things. People give me great suggestions. Anyways, um, Yeah, I'm trying to write. If I don't know where when I talked about it. I think it was in one of my videos last week. What I'm doing for some of the stories that I'm creating right now, I'm writing Thomas Valiant #2. Renzo actually is working on the first chapter because that's completely written, and he started that a little while ago, doing some sketch art for a couple of new characters that appear in Thomas Valiant #2. I think we'll probably have the campaign for that once I get Thomas Valiant #1 out of the way. Possibly, maybe leave it until this. I don't know. I don't want to do it in December. Maybe in January. I'm not sure. But anyways, for Thomas Valiant #2, yeah, there is a very specific group of villains in that, and you have two characters there who have a, let's say, history with these. One would be Pulse, who you if you read Thomas Valiant #1, you've been introduced to Pulse. He's one of the characters there. Another one is Artemis. She's going to be introduced in the Valiant Heroes #1, which she's the one of the main characters for the backup story. And again, she participates in the story for Thomas Valiant #2. But anyways, so they have a history with these villains, and these villains are very cyberpunk esque. So that's why I'm trying to get into cyberpunk. I try to immerse myself in something in order to write better about it. That's what I was doing, as I said within my last video. That's what I did with Crown the Destroyer. I sat there as I was doing my normal everyday work, listening to every last Robert E. Howard story that was recorded to this point, and that might be every last one. Anyways, for Conan and some Call and some Solomon King, not every last story that he wrote, but the stuff that has to do with those three characters. And at the same time, I would switch that up with also, I did have a couple of books that I went through of Robert Jordan for Conan and what was the other, DeCampi, and Roy Thomas's stuff and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, I tried to immerse myself in it as much as possible. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do with the cyberpunk. Da, da, da. Robert says, grammar of art. Yes, lettering is the grammar of art. I think that would be a good way to put it, if that's what you're referring to. John is here in the chat. How you doing, John? John's Longbox. Just if anybody wants to know, John has his own channel. He does showcases of older comics, just talking about older comics, how great they were, and giving you a little bit of a history on some of it, because John just has so many comics. But yeah, go over to John's YouTube channel. You click on his, I think the best way to do it is you click on his avatar and left click on it, and then you can open up his page in a new tab, and you can go and subscribe to John's Longbox if you want to see a showcase channel about good comics. Let's see. Puffy says that is a fascinating breakdown. Again, the Will Eisner breakdown that I went over. If you weren't here for the first, yeah, I agree. Fascinating is the word. Um, I, Breaking it down into logical sentence fragments or clauses and things like that in order to understand what you're trying to speak, because that's what you're doing as an author. And when you're using sequential art. Now, I don't think I've mentioned this before, but if I'm not mistaken, Will Eisner came up with the the phrase sequential art itself. If I do believe he did. So yeah, here's the man who is, the grandfather of all this. I think I'm going to have to re-up those covers in just a minute. But yeah, um, it is a fascinating breakdown to try to view it that way. I want to do that more and more because, again, I guess I went off on a sidetrack there. That's what you're trying to do as an author. You're trying to convey a meaning to your reader, and the story is where the meaning comes out. And so you got to do it within the visuals and the text as a part of sequential art, and to use both of them as if they were a sentence in order to speak to the reader directly by using both images and words. That's a fascinating way of looking at it. Let's see who else is in the comments here. Jones is here. First, it's been a while since I caught one of these. Oh, great to see you back. Let's see who else is here. Scrolling down. Yeah, I guess Robert's saying a disembodied consciousness. Yeah, that's how the Will Eisner picture looked like, I guess, if you wanted to talk about the fellow was ascending after he died. Let's see. Let's see. Paul says, when is Kit Fox coming? Well, it depends on how you ordered Kit Fox, because here's the thing with that campaign. Um, I'm going to be printing each of the stories as a floppy first, and then I'm going to be at the end printing the entire thing as the graphic novel. That's how the printing schedule goes. So let me just read that up in the background to look at those covers again. Give me 1 second. I think, yeah, this is the one. Go back to the comments here. So the thing is that, excuse me. The thing is that I will be printing the floppies first. So Kit Fox will be the first floppy that's going to be printed. So there is a chance for those people who just ordered the Fox floppy that you might receive it earlier than everyone else, just because I might start shipping them out just as soon as I get every last one of the floppies done. So it depends on how you ordered it. Unfortunately, I'm not trying to penalize anybody for ordering something larger, obviously, but everything that's part of the extras will be printed first, then each of the floppies, then the graphic novel itself. So that's what the Redemption of Kit Fox is, the first floppy to be printed, and is, I do believe, in the order, the first story. No, it might be the second story. No, I think it's the second story within the graphic novel itself. So there's that. And there will be, you'll see more of Kit Fox in Thomas Valiant #2 as well, because Lorenzo loves this character and wants to see more of him, and he loves to draw him. So that's what that is about. Let's see. Scrolling down, see if we have anything else. Jones says, you have to know your audience too and what you can get away with. I wouldn't expect high level rule bending to work with Garfield. Exactly. That's what he says at the first. Will Eisner, in the first of his chapter, he says you have to use a language that your audience is going to understand. You have to be on the same, he doesn't use these words, but you have to be on the same wavelength in order to understand that you're using a language that the people you're speaking to are going to understand themselves. Although Robert disagrees, he says Garfield is highbrow, hidden messages around. Just what is the lasagna really? To me, lasagna. I'll be very Freudian. Sometimes the lasagna is just a lasagna. Trust me, I know lasagna really well. Uh, it is one of the things I grew up eating a lot of. But anyways, that's a different story altogether. Let's see, scrolling down. Puffy has a question. Thank you very much for tagging me in it to let me know that it's for me. The fourth age. Say, in a video long ago, you had said that people said they don't believe women could really be superheroines. What do you think of that? I think that Hero, as I say on all my videos for my Saturday videos, which is based around the idea of traditional heroes, which are based upon virtue. So those virtues that have been carried down in Western civilization for 3,000 years now, of prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. So all you need to do is access those virtues in order to be a heroic individual, access them correctly, obviously, through right reason. And women can do that as well as men can, but they access them in a different way, if you ask me. So women are different heroes than men. Try to portray a female hero as if they were male is going to fall flat, and people don't want that. And we see that all around us today, especially within something like Captain Marvel, the new Kelly Sue DeConnick Captain Marvel, which I'm not sure what year she reinstituted that, but that's exactly what she did. I covered this in one of my videos. This was probably a couple of years ago. I covered something that she did an article for, or I think it was an interview. Anyways, she was saying, I think it was an interview with ESPN. She was saying that what she did was she looked at all the female pilots, because this character is basically Air Force. What is it? Carol Danvers? So she looked at all of the female pilots and Air Force people that were considered heroic, and she didn't like any of them. So she decided to pick Chuck Yeager and basically shove him into a woman's suit. So that's what Carol Danvers, aka Carl Manvers, is within Marvel Comics. That's why people, well, not just because of the visuals, call her Carl Manvers, because this is literally a man shoved into a woman's suit. It doesn't work. People know it doesn't work. This character is, well, to some extent, disgusting and is just repulsive to a lot of people. Why? Because a woman is a woman and a man is a man. And yeah, we can both access those virtues which allow us to be heroic, but we access them in different ways because each of us, as women or men, access reality in different ways through our senses and how we perceive things within our mind, how our bodies work, all this kinds of thing. And so we concentrate on different things. Again, some of the things I always talk about, how men's eyes and women's eyes are differently structured. So we take in things, and that's how logically we understand things first, is through the senses. We take sensory input and then we run it through the medium, or I guess we'll just call it the ringer of reason and logic, and we get what is actual and real. We get real knowledge, which is called science in the old way. That's the old Latin word for it. Science just means knowledge or understanding, not just physical science or natural science that we understand today. But yeah, since they got to go through your senses, and our senses are different as men and women, and the way we perceive things are different, and our minds are structured differently, and that they are. And so, since we're structured different physically, we interpret the input of our senses differently. So, we actually access those virtues differently. So, great question, Puffy. Sorry to go off on that one for so long for everybody else. Scrolling down, let's see. Uh, Let's see, what do we got here? Scrolling down just a little bit, reading as I do. Calliope says, that is such a simple story in this one page, but it pulls my heartstrings. That would be, hopefully, you're talking about the Will Eisner one. Yeah. If you read it, if you can read it, I don't know. It's kind of small on my screen, but the whole point of the story was the guy could actually fly, and he wanted to show the world that he was able to fly. And as soon as he went up on top of a building and jumped off to show the world that he could fly, he got accidentally shot by stray bullets, which were basically part of the hullabaloo of the spirit and him fighting the criminals, and then he dies. He falls to his death. So yeah, it's one of those. That's what Will Eisner is known for. These great short stories, and impactful as well. So let's see, scrolling down. See if this comment is for me. Austin says, let me guess, RJ's secret project is 4 full graphic novels he finished during his free time. Well, no. Although I wish I could sell 4 graphic novels at a time. I really wish I could, because I would. Trust me, I got scripts coming out of my ears. And I'm just if if I could actually write as a writer and not be the producer of the comics themselves, I would churn out so many comics per month. It would be glorious. But yeah, I'm trying to do as much as possible. Again, right now I have a campaign which is first of all, the Second Chance Thomas Valiant campaign is being fulfilled right now. There's about 10 people that still need to be shipped out to. We have the printing and the last of getting everything ready for the Valiant Heroes, which is being done within the next month or two. And after that, we have Crom the Destroyer, which is the campaign that's up right now. And we're pushing that campaign and working on that as well. Almost done of one chapter already. And besides that, I have the story in Anvil's Iron Age magazine #2, which is on Fund My Comic right now. And I have another story that I'm writing and having someone do the art for, that I'm going to submit to Alterna, while at the same time writing 3 other scripts for other graphic novels for the future. So yeah, I got a lot on my plate right now. But I love it. I love it. The thing is that as long as I can generate enough money from selling the books to do another book, then that's where I'm going with it. And who knows, I might be putting up some some web comics in the near future as well, just to see how that works. Anyways, let's see what else we got for comics here. Vaz is here. He says, in most of the recent American comic book stories, I noticed that the narrator is scarcely used anymore. Do you think it's something that should be brought back? Absolutely, yes. I, in my books, use narrator. You have a first person perspective within most of the books, and I really don't think it works as much as the people who write modern comics think it does. I also think it's a cheat in some way to use it that much. Not a cheat to use it, but a cheat to use it that much. And it comes out, I am really a big supporter of Jim Shooter. I think that he made Marvel Comics into what we all love from the 80s and then into the 90s. Let me just re up those covers one more time. Let's see here. Okay, back to my comments. Yeah, so, but one of the things that he did to actually move over to Valiant Comics when he started that company was to get rid of the thought balloon and to get rid of sound effects. Those were two major mistakes, if you ask me. And getting rid of the thought balloons was something that people started to do more and more within comics because they thought it's for a more mature audience, so called, to use quotation marks around that. And so these are too cartoony to be using to see their thoughts. And so they replaced it with first person dialogue boxes. And since there's so much of that, they can't use proper narration. So, yeah, Vaz, completely. Within the books that I'm doing right now, you have the Valiant Heroes. There is some narration in that, and so it is with Kit Fox. Within the Rampaging Thor, there's a first-person perspective, but it's a little different than you would normally get it within modern comics. It's more of a, let's say, Mary Shelley way of doing that. But within Crom the Destroyer, yeah, absolutely, the Robert E. Howard way of telling a story heavily depends on the narrator being a part of what you're taking in with that story. So yeah, I wrote that book completely with that in mind and using the narrator, but I also use it as a break when I write that story and have put everything within the panels for dialogue. That is to say, you can't have you can't have too much of one thing at the same time. So I have massive amounts of action for my books. About all of my books are about 80% action, but you have to have a break here and there. And sometimes the break is a break in the action so that there can be like one, usually I only put about one, maximum two pages of a break in between action. That's it for some kind of discussion or some kind of slowdown. But at the same time, there can be a break by using different modes of speaking within telling the story itself, which is what I do within Crom the Destroyer. You have the narrator actually using some of the thoughts of the main character and explaining them. Excuse me once again. But that's a Robert E. Howard thing to do. And then you have the dialogue itself. So there's a break between those two. Yeah, great point, Vaz. I agree completely with that point. Let's see, scrolling down. Oh, Taz is here. How you doing, Taz? Let's see what he says. Hey, RJ, great to be here. What do you think about AI generated art? Honestly, I was really, like everyone, smitten with it when it first came out. But right now, I can spot AI generated art from a mile away. And honestly, when I see something, so when I'm scrolling through, usually I give myself about 20 minutes on Twitter in the mornings or midday or so, just to see what people have posted, because I'm subscribed to a lot of comic things, and I download like these covers that you're looking at in the background from Twitter. But the thing is that I can spot, just scrolling through it, I can spot an AI generated picture, and I just keep moving. I don't care. There's no way I'm going to share or download an AI generated picture. It's not real. It's just not. So you can use it. Great. I think the best way to use it would probably be for someone who is an actual artist to use for poses and things like that. If you want to use it to say, what kind of pose would this look like? And then, like I said earlier, copy it yourself just as a pose, something like that. Great. One of the things I do think it's great for is the fact that it's going to take all these people who think they're superstars either as writers or artists or everything else and take them down a peg. So I'm sorry, it is um, to some extent going to destroy some of the art that is going to come out over the next little while, and probably more and more. But it's like watching a a computer generated movie. It's the difference between Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies. You can tell the massive difference between practical effects and something that's computer generated, so you can with everything else. There is, well, I actually want to do a video on this, Taz, so I might do a video on it in a little bit, maybe in a couple of weeks or so. Not entirely sure I will. So I'll just say this now. One of the things I wanted to say about it is the fact that there is a German word, and I don't know it off the top of my head because I don't know German very well. But Germans come up with the best descriptions for things that you can put into one word. And this German word means the smudging of your art by your hand moving across the page as you paint or draw or something like that. And there's an actual German word for it. And that's something you're never going to get with AI art, never. And that's something that I think that we as a species um, will look for within our art. When something's too clean, it's like being in the Matrix, right? Um, if you remember the first Matrix movie, they tried to make everything perfect for them, and they lost all of their crop of human beings because the as the as the fella said, the the primitive brain, the primitive part of the human brain, just recognized something wrong there, and that's exactly what I think about AI art. But again, it's going to take a lot of people down a peg, which I think is for the better. The less celebrity that we have with things, and the more down to earth people are, the more connected to reality stories are, and art is, and the better it's going to be. All right, so scrolling down. I'm getting behind again on my. It's almost been here for an hour. I'm getting behind on these comments. Let's see. Pedro says the very first comic, excuse me, the very first comic was basically a light novel, a story told with a couple of images in each volume. Not sure if that comment was for me. He's talking about Will Eisner's Spirit, but yeah, I think that might be a description of Eisner's work. Let's see. Let's see. Robert, I think, mimic my statement. He says AI art is just mimicry. You know, you're looking at AI art. It's there. It's there. Are the wrong number of fingers on a hand. Stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. One of the things, again, as I was saying just earlier, I'm taking Mike Barron's uh, what is it, advice to try to sketch a little bit more with some of the things that I'm doing for panel layouts and things like that. And yeah, one of the things that it talks about is when you're studying art itself is that use templates, but only use templates um, so that you don't follow it exactly. Never follow it exactly. You need to have something that is going to deviate as your hand moves a little bit so that you can see the difference, so that you can understand how things work better. And yeah, AI art just doesn't do that. It doesn't have that. Let's see. Tony says, what do I think of the Spectre? I don't remember. Actually, I do have the Secret Origin issue of the Spectre. I think it's the same Secret Origin issue. It's from probably 1984, 1986. That there is both the Spectre and who else? The Phantom Stranger. Yes. I always get the two confused within the origin. I don't know what the origin of the Spectre is. And I know that the origin of the Phantom Stranger has changed a lot. I actually just take the 1984 Secret origin of the Phantom Stranger as Carter Phillis and take that to be his origin. But anyways, I don't know a whole lot of the Spectre, and I really think that his origins are much different than how they use him today. So interesting character, and I think he is very much connected to that character, which is now in the public domain, which is the Green Llama. So yeah, I do know probably more about the Green Llama than about the Spectre. But yeah, it's an interesting character that hopefully can be used in a lot better ways. Those comics are fun covers. I'll tell you right now that Spectre cover. Let's see. Scrolling down. Greg says, in romance, a heroine is saved by the hero. Yes, that's what happens in romance. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. Austin says he hasn't heard of Carl Manvers in a while now. You're going to hear more about Carl Manvers when that stupid Marvels movie comes out, if it ever does come out, because again, they're having troubles because they don't have any writers and they can't write anything so that they can actually sell this character to the audience before they put it out in theaters. And if they can't do that, they're not going to release it. So let's hope this writers, what is it, strike drags on and on and on for years so that we never see this awful Marvels movie. So let's see, scrolling down. I think this is probably not for me, but I'll read it anyways. Pedro says, a woman could be the protagonist from an action focused story, but a man hardly can be a protagonist of a romance history. Well, I would say if you have a reason for a lot of the things that works within your comics, then you can fudge a little bit. But again, it's one of the things I'm trying to do with my comic. When I have female heroes, actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to re-up some of that Crom art. Let me just put this beautiful picture of one of my female heroes in the background. Here is Cardinal. Where did she go? She's in this list somewhere. Let me see. Scrolling down. Oh, here we are. All right, there's the background for Cardinal. This is Cardinal, one of my characters, one of my female characters. And I'll just put that up for a minute or two, and then I'll get back to the Crom art. But yeah, this is one of my female characters. One of the things I tried to do with the female characters is have them act in female ways and have their powers be reflective of the fact that they're female, and how they use their powers specifically reflect how they act as a female. That's one of the things within one of the things you probably, well, you don't know because it wasn't specifically part of Thomas Valiant #1 if you read Thomas Valiant #1. Let's see. I'm trying to find my place here within the comments to just give me 1 second. Okay, so within the book for Thomas Valiant, you have three female characters. One is Feral, and the other is Phantasm, and the third is Disc. Feral is pretty tough. She's not indestructible, so she can act in a much more aggressive way. You have Phantasm. She's very feminine. And the thing is about Phantasm, she is able to make herself insubstantial. And you'll notice in the book that she's insubstantial the majority of the time. She keeps on wafting through things. Why? Because she knows as a female that if she's in the middle of a fight and she's not insubstantial, she's going to get hit and she's going to get killed even. So she is one of those characters. Again, it's something you probably didn't notice, but yeah, that's one of the part of the backstory for Phantasm. You'll see that over and over again, she has her powers activated almost constantly, and you can see that by the smoke or the wisps of smoke that are around her. That's a a visual signal that her powers are activated, and she is to some extent insubstantial because she knows her limitations. And the third one is Disc, and you see Disc gets into a lot of trouble within Thomas Valiant. One of the things that I wrote as a backstory of Disc, and you probably don't know anything about this unless you got the cards with that as well, because there's a bit more backstory in that. She's originally part of a mercenary team, but she is basically the what do you call it? She's the Overwatch for the mercenary team. She's the one who's able to use her discs in order to see things, in order to give everybody information. She's not typically one of the ones that's in the middle of a fight, but the reason why we put a hood on her and gave her that long cloak is because, and again, this isn't in the book, but it is part of the backstory, is that it's covered in chainmail on the inside because she knows she's going to get hurt, and she makes herself a bit of a armor in order for her to actually survive by being part of this new team. So yeah, there's a lot of things like that which I put in my comics that are part of the backstory that will come out after a while. You guys get to hear them early because here you are listening to me talk for over an hour, all these kinds of things. But yeah, females are going to act like females and males like males. You got to make sure that this is part of your story. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. Rex is here. Let's see what Rex has to say. Rex says, sorry, I'm late to the party. Also, to explain my joke from last week's Geek Out, part of my enmity for Alan Moore is that while I understand some of his frustration, he lacks accountability. Oh, big time. People just fall over Alan Moore for some reason I cannot fathom. All right, let me put up some of Crom the Destroyer in the background while I get to these last uh, comments and see if I can uh, answer these before it gets too late. Although we did start early this week, so hopefully we got a bunch of people in here that would normally not be staying up this late. Scrolling down, a lot of people talking to each other in the comments. Great, great, great. Scrolling down, people talking about Uncanny Valley. Let's see. Oh, Rex here has a comment for me. He says, RJ, if you could boil it down, what would you say are the essentials of a werewolf story? I actually go with the original ways of looking at monster stories. So, well, again, I don't know. I would say find a anchor to your story that is actually connected to something in history or a historical way of describing your character like a werewolf and go with that. So I wouldn't say there are essentials for every werewolf story, but I'll say there are essentials for what kind of werewolf story that you want to do. That would be my advice. For me, again, this is part of what has been published for Feral, who is my werewolf girl. She has a backstory which you'll only know about if you ordered the cards with Thomas Valiant #1. And part of that is that she's connected to some Norse mythology within a werewolf story, and you'll see that on the cards itself about where she originally started to become a werewolf and all this kinds of things. Again, that's on the back of the cards. If you might need a magnifying glass for some of it, because I crammed it in so much as possible. But again, this is part also of the reason why these are the little things, the little Easter eggs that you might not know of. Why Thor thinks that he recognizes this character and he equates her with a slave that he used to own because that's connected to a werewolf story that actually happened within Thor's past within Norse mythology, which is connected to the origin of Feral, which is where she gets her werewolf powers from. Again, the entire thing is never connected directly, but you can see it on the back of the cards if you ordered the cards. So yeah, take a historical reference and run with that. That would be my suggestion. Let's see. Scrolling down here a little bit, try to go a little faster so I'm not here for another hour. Let's see. Breaker says, I have encountered the mixing of lettering she videos before. I think that's a typo. Mainly in children's books. I've rarely come across it in comics. All right. Scrolling down. So it's good comment, but I don't know what I can add to that. Let's see. Scrolling down. Tony, I don't know if this comment is for me or a question for me. Have you ever read James O'Barr's The Crow? No, I haven't. If it's the same thing as The Crow, the movie, then I know what you're talking about, but that's about it. No, I have not. Let's see. Scrolling down. Breaker, I think this one is for me. It says, it is quite an interesting way of making comics that appears to have been a lost art in the past couple of decades from my experience anyways. The Eisner way of making comics, yeah, I agree, if that's what you're talking about. So scrolling down. So I think Breaker is talking about the way that lettering is handled. He says, I mainly see the mix of lettering and visuals in kids' books and rarely in comics. Yeah, this is one of the things that, again, Eisner himself, he saw himself as a cartoonist. So, and he had no problem with that. People called him a cartoonist. He said, yeah, I got no problem with you calling me a cartoonist. But so, yeah, he has what people would think of today as being a childish way of doing things. I don't think it's childish at all. I think it's fascinating and a very good way to make comics. And I think that, again, if you want to do like web comics or stuff like that that are a couple of panels, go back to Eisner. And especially if you're someone who is just starting out with a cartoony feel instead of being very hyper realistic, yeah, that's what I would say. He would be the guru of that. Why more people aren't doing it in order to make their webcomics, I don't know. Anyways, scrolling down, let's see if these questions are for me. Calliope says, progressivism is bleeding into romance novels too. I indulge in them sometimes, especially romance with a sci fi setting. In comment sections on Amazon, complaints about strong female seems obligatory. Yeah, unfortunately, the as I do as I say every once in a while, and I talked about with John C. Wright when I did my interview with him. Yeah, the actual novel industry was captured by progressives long before the comic industry, so they have a stranglehold on that for almost 20 years now. So scrolling down. Let's see here. Da, da. Again, don't know if this is for me, Pedro. I noticed the errors in my grammar just when I read it. Sometimes the correct just play me faced blue smiling. Okay. I don't think that comment is for me, but I wanted to read it because one of the things is I said last week was one of the great things I find is text to speech. And if you use just a computerized voice for text to speech, which you can get online for free, have it read your dialogue and you'll see if it's stilted in any way, and especially if you have any kind of typos. Anyways, scrolling down. Let's see. I think um, a lot of you are having a lot more conversation in the comments with each other than with me. That's great. Let's see. Paulus is here. Hail RJ with the chat. What did I miss? Well, we're just talking about the first chapter of Will Eisner's book and about using visuals as text and text as visuals. If you want to go back and listen to that. Let's see, scrolling down. Taz has a comment for me, just about getting to the end here. RJ, are you going to be dabbling with the multiverse in your comic universe or too early? I'm going to stay away from multiverse like the plague. I'm going to have something in it that has, I don't know, people could think of it in terms of a multiverse, but it's really not. It's just, there's a lot to do with um, the movement between dimensions, but not really a multiverse. Because just think about us right now as human beings. Right now, the majority of people in real life believe in at least two dimensions, right? A physical and a spiritual dimension. So things like that. And I think that within 80s Marvel books you had a lot of that as well. You had with Limbo, and with what was the other, there was the dimension which is basically hell, run by Mephisto, and there's another one with his Belisarius. I can't remember what his name is. Again, that would be Limbo originally, but anyways, um there's a lot of different dimensions spiritually and things like that. So yeah, I want to put in sort of different dimensions which are connected slightly that way, but more towards a little bit of how people get trapped in certain little pockets of the world. But I don't want a multiverse. No, very very far from that. I don't like that idea, and especially if you read or listened to some of my recent videos about how the multiverse is now going to be used for meta modernism. I want to stay as far away from that as possible. So scrolling down, let's see. Comment from Puffy here. Let's see. Question: what do you think of Daredevil as a character? Do you think he is a good example of religious superheroes? Uh, I think that's the best you can get within Marvel. That's about it. I don't think he's a good example of it. No, I think he's the best you can get. Um, Especially because the fact that everyone keeps on going back to, well, his religious part of the character was given to him by Frank Miller, and he gave him his Catholic feel as a character. But yeah, Frank Miller is really not a person that you want to be taking theological advice from, nor does he really pay a whole lot of attention to actual religion as if it were something that could be believed in. I think he takes it more and uses it as just a social construct, if you ask me. So that's about the best you're going to get within mainstream comics. But yeah, I don't particularly like it, but it's he's using it at the very least in if you look at the very least Frank Miller's works because other people violate this all the time, but he uses it in a consistent way. That is something that I will give him credit for. Let's see, scrolling down. Um, let's see. Da, da. Breaker says, I'm seeing deleted comments. How do you delete comments? I didn't even know you could delete comments, honestly. Let's see, scrolling down. Oh, good gracious. I thought I was getting to the end of the comments. No, I just getting to the end of the screen of comments until it jumps on me. Let's see. Elijah has a question for me. See if we can wrap this up with the questions. RJ, do you think that Wonder Woman series depicts Greek mythology well? No. To be honest, no. Um, it's like Marvel's version of the Norse mythology. It is completely sanitized. It's a very interesting way of looking at a version of that mythology, but it doesn't, for Marvel's Thor and Valhalla and everything else, it doesn't depict in any way, shape, or form the actual historical context of those things. It's just a good story about it. And I feel that way exactly about Wonder Woman and the Greek mythology. It's really Greek, not really Roman, even though you can include some of that again in there. Although, if I remember correctly, with the War of the Gods, there was a difference between even the Greek and the Roman mythological figures within DC. So yeah, it's nothing like the actual stories themselves, nor what is trying to be expressed in there. Trust me. Well, I really hate it when people say trust me, so I guess I shouldn't do that. But when I was doing my master's degree, one of the things that I did was I was doing a textual analysis of everything written in ancient Greek before Plato and Aristotle. So a lot of mythology was in there as well. And I was trying to read it, usually with, at the very least, the Greek there next to me, so that I could transfer over to it to see exactly some things. But, anyways, point is that these characters and these mythologies and things like that are vastly different than what you're going to see within DC Comics. So it's a storybook version of it, and it's a very interesting storybook version of it, one that works to some extent, but it's not historical, so it doesn't depict Greek mythology well. No. Scrolling down. Da, 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 da. Let's see if this comment is for me. It says, oops, there you go. Puffy. Oh, it's Puffy says, pseudo multiverse moment between dimensions. I like the sound of that. Movement between dimensions. So yeah, not I'm not going to have a whole bunch of different versions of a character or things like that. I'm going to have I don't even know how to explain it. I can explain it to myself, but the fact is that we already seen within Thomas Valiant that you have portals, and that those portals are very dangerous. Discs use those portals, and we'll see if you ordered the Valiant Heroes, you get to see a lot more of exactly how dangerous they are. And some of that will be pulled on and hinted at within the Valiant Heroes. Probably we'll leave it there. There's a little bit of it in Thomas Valiant #2, not a whole lot, but anyways, yeah. That dimensional aspect will be there, not a multiverse aspect. So, all right, scrolling down. All right, we're getting to the end of the comments. Rex says, there was a multiverse concept that interested me. The multiverse singularity, a singular being that exists across all universes at and is the same in all of them. Eh, that sounds a little bit to me like the DC. I can't remember what the character's name was, but there was a character within the Crisis on Infinite Earths that existed in that way, if I remember correctly. I haven't read Crisis in a while, but anyways, scrolling down, we'll get to the end of the comments here. Scrolling down, Breaker says, and he's right about this, maybe it's better to say two planes of existence. The world is visually in 3 dimensions after all. Yeah, I was just thinking that myself. Maybe I'm not using the correct terminology when I say dimensions. Let's see. Puffy says, oh, trust me, I'm not taking any Frank Miller religious advice. Yeah, no, that's a good thing to do. All right. Scrolling down. Rex says last he heard Frank Miller was a atheist. I'm not entirely sure. I really don't know. And Tony says again, have I read The Crow? No, I don't. I have never read The Crow. Scrolling down, we're getting to the end of our comments. And I have Breaker saying he'll be glad when it ships if he's talking about my book. Hopefully we'll get some shipping done soon. So I'm going to put up the art for, give me 1 second here, for Crom the Destroyer one more time, just in the background for a few minutes, and let everybody know that, yes, we're moving right along in Crom the Destroyer. However, we only have 6 days left in the campaign. I think it's about 6 days now. So the link is in the description for Crom the Destroyer if you want to get in there and order that. Only, let's see, I'm not entirely sure. What was I going to say? Well, anyways, the link for Crom the Destroyer is in the description. The link for the Valiant Heroes is in the description as well if you want to order that. And you can order the Valiant Heroes there as well. You can only order the book. You can't order a lot of the things that I've been talking about tonight, which is the cards. You could order that with the Second Chance campaign, but that is over right now. We're going to get some more of those printed anyways, and we'll see if I can have more versions of those as well. So that might be a up and coming, what would you call it, perk that you could get, or at the very least, something that you could get on the end of one of the Thomas Valiant campaigns that's coming up. Anyways, so yeah, Crom the Destroyer, we're getting into our last days of the campaign. If you want a copy of that book, you should order now. Hopefully, we'll drive up our last couple of days and get to, which is, well, I know I set a really low, this is what I need money, but that's not exactly what I need. Hopefully we're going to drive it up to somewhere around 20,000 so that everybody gets a nice little check for all of their work. Everybody is going to get done. I pay everybody, but you get bonuses if we do extra well, things like that. So I try to give my artists as much of the pot as possible before moving on to making new books. Excuse me. So yeah, if you are looking at Crom the Destroyer in the background and it looks appealing to you, you click on that link and go on over and read the 11 pages that I have posted with full text for that. So word balloons there. You can read the first 11 pages. And that's because the book is 66 pages. And I want to thank everybody for coming. We have about 20 people, 21 people still here in the chat. We had about 23, 26 while I was spewing off everything. But I want to thank everyone once again for coming. You'll hear a lot more about Crom the Destroyer in the next coming days if you follow me on Twitter, or I'll post a lot more on the comment section to try to drive up the sales for Crom the Destroyer. Hopefully I'm not going to make everybody sick of that by the time I finish talking about Crom the Destroyer. And I'm going to, as usual, leave everybody here with my outro right now, which is to show the second trailer, the 45-second trailer for Crom the Destroyer. Again, thank you everyone for showing up, and I'll see you all again next week, and we can geek out about comics some more. All right, I'll see you all later. Bye.
No matter how many wars you fight, no matter how much blood you shed, no matter how much rage you loose, no matter how many demons you face, no matter how many companions you lose, no matter if our kingdom falls, I know that you will return to me in honor.